Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Esri GeoDev webinar series. About 3 years ago, we started this series as a way to continue engaging in developer-related topics and discussions in between dev summits. Speaking of which, we have our next developer summit coming up March 9th through 11th. We have a lot of new topics, advanced features, and additional functionality to share with you over the coming months, so be sure to stay connected with us through our GeoDev webinar series page on go.esri.com/geodev or any of our social media accounts at Esri GeoDev. We would love to have conversations like these taking place throughout the year so that when we do meet at one of these Dev Summit conferences, it will be as though we never stopped. We hope you get as much or more out of this webinar than you anticipated. Now we would like to introduce you to today's webinar, Designing Sites and Pages in ArcGIS Hub and ArcGIS Enterprise. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. We've taken a screenshot of an example of the attendee interface. You should see something that looks like this on your own computer desktop in the upper right corner. You're listening in using your computer's speaker system by default. If you would prefer to join over the phone, just select Use Telephone in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenter by typing your questions into the questions pane of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect these and address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. I would now like to introduce one of our presenters, Patrick Hammonds. Let's get started, shall we, Patrick?
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks, Amy. Hi, everyone. As Amy mentioned, my name is Patrick Hammonds. Work on the product team for ArcGIS Hub. And so today we're going to be talking about two different products, ArcGIS Hub and ArcGIS Enterprise sites. So introduce those products to start. A little idea about kind of what the philosophy is between the two. And then we're going to walk through building a basic site. We're going to be doing all the demos today are going to be in Hub, but the same flow applies to ArcGIS Enterprise sites if that's what you're interested in. We're then going to talk about how to curate engaging content, specifically leveraging a few of ArcGIS's solutions, and when to bring them in and how to use them in the app. And then we're going to talk through, I think the main piece today is talking how do you design a complete web experience. And so we're going to be looking through the application to kind of show how you can use Hub to make a great web experience for your end users. Well, let's get going into introducing the products. So first, Enterprise Sites. ArcGIS Enterprise Sites is a capability that allows you to create customized websites and web pages to feature content from your portal to non-GIS users. Similarly, but different in terms of product, we have ArcGIS Hub, which is an easy-to-configure cloud platform for organizations to collaborate with their communities to accomplish information-driven initiatives. So as you can tell in the product statements, they're kind of similar. There's a little bit of differences, and we'll talk about that now. Starting with ArcGIS Hub is accessed from ArcGIS Online. ArcGIS Online can use services and content from many places, including the Enterprise portal. But the application itself, ArcGIS Hub, is accessed from ArcGIS Online. There's two different licenses. There's the basic license, which allows you to create sites and pages, provide data in either open data or private data, showcase apps and build apps, use dashboards for tracking engagement with your content, as well as creating feedback surveys within the Hub. What you get for premium for an additional yearly subscription fee for your organization, you have access to pre-configured initiatives, which is basically sites and pages combined with various applications to address specific goals. You also have community identities, which is a separate ArcGIS Online organization to house people in the general communities who might want to follow your initiatives and the content you create, and as well as the ability to schedule events and form specific teams to collaborate on different pieces of content within the Hub. But today, everything we're going to be talking about for the most part is in ArcGIS Hub Basic. You'll see a few different things referencing some things like initiatives and community identities and teams. We're going to be focusing just on site building and layout editing today, so everything should be applicable to you regardless of licensing that you currently have in your organization. We also have a resource you might want to check out if you're wondering about the differences between the two licenses. This is our product page, and there's a pricing section with a great table to kind of see what features you have access to. and that's available at the URL on your screen. Also, if you look up ArcGIS Hub pricing, it should come up on Google. So similarly, enterprise sites allows you to build sites and open data. It's accessed from the enterprise portal. So it's a separate application, and if you're in a portal environment on ArcGIS Enterprise, you can access it there. There are fewer features, so you can see it's just sites and open data and applications. Main reason for that is it's not public, it's not on the open web in the same way. It's hosted on your servers. So the dashboards and feedback and community identity, all that is not quite, it's not possible in Enterprise. People often ask when to use ArcGIS Hub versus enterprise sites. And if you can tell by the bullets on the left, ArcGIS Hub offers many more features and many more capabilities. So in general, if you have access to ArcGIS Align at your organization, we recommend using ArcGIS Hub. There's no credit burn, unlimited downloads for providing data. We host the infrastructure on Amazon Web Services. The feature release also leaves enterprise sites. We release on a weekly basis, sometimes more frequent, depending if there's a fix we have to ship faster. But we ship every week, as opposed to enterprise sites. We package up once a year, and then we do quarterly updates or patches if there are bugs that come up. So it's just a much slower release cycle on enterprise sites. Hub is also optimized for the web. So from CDN, our packages available via CDN as well as SEO. So you don't have to worry about managing your SEO for the site. It's completely, it's in the same package. So people should be able to find your sites on Google. There's also 3 different subsystems that enterprise sites does not support, and that's things like custom domains with HTTPS certificate generation, the expanded download system and caching over the platform, as well as an improved search experience. We have 2 different APIs that we manage ourselves that provide additional functionality, and that's not accessible from enterprise. There's also additional licensable features for external community engagement. So if you ever wanted to do community engagement and invite people to events, you wouldn't be able to do that in enterprise sites. But if your IT policy prohibits you from using ArcGIS Online, then by all means use enterprise sites. We've had a lot of customers who are in disconnected environments, and they really love being able to build sites for their internal and external stakeholders. You will, or if you need to be able to control the web server, that's a great reason to use enterprise sites. Cool, so now we've got the kind of the product differences out. Let's talk through how to build something before we get into planning a site. We can just start using the app. To make your first site, there are a few things you need to set up in ArcGIS Online. You'll need a creator user type with Essential Apps enabled. So if you're trying to create, if you're trying to give access to others in your organization to Hub, you need to make sure they have that creator user type enabled with access to Essential Apps. You'll also need some privileges, including create content, create group, share to group, view org groups, and view org items. A couple nice to have privileges. If you need additional access, or things like create group with update capabilities, which allows you to share editing rights to your site to other people in your organization, or administrative access if you want to have more control over being able to put people in groups as opposed to having them approve an invite. So if you want to set up a workflow where different groups are working at different parts of your Hub site, you'll want to have administrative access to control that access. To find the app, they're both found in the app drawer for the different environments. So on the left, you're seeing the app launcher from ArcGIS Align, and on the right, you're seeing the app launcher from Enterprise. One's Hub, one's Sites. They're very similar looking icon. And if you click those, that'll open up the Hub application or the Sites capability. Another option is on ArcGIS Align. If you click Create from My Content, there is a section for sites, and if you click create sites, it'll take you to the Hub application. You'll be able to do everything you see today. When you launch the application, what you're going to see is the sites or the Hub overview, depending on your environment. This is a useful place for making new sites and seeing your already created work and being able to jump to it quickly. There's also access to different pieces of content that have been shared to the site, so you can see org-wide what content's in your org and shared to sites. And if you're in a Hub Premium environment, you can also access community features. So on the left screenshot, you're seeing the community tab, as well as the community dashboard, which is tracking who's accessing the content externally. And cool, with that, we can start creating our first site. So today, this is what Hub looks like. This is the premium version. If you're in, if you don't have access to premium, it'll look like this. It's basically a stripped down version. That community stuff is gone. We're going to be sticking with premium today. And I'm going to create a new initiative. And this initiative is going to be specifically trying to increase our population with people who have dogs. So we're having more dogs. I'm from Philadelphia, love dogs, want to make sure that dogs feel welcome when they come to Philly. So we'll call it More Dogs Philly. I hit create initiative, and my initiative creation process has started. It's activating the initiative, which what that does is it creates a site. It also creates a series of groups that the site needs to manage some of the content flows. And now it's complete. I'm going to land on my site editor. And first thing you see is Get Started helper, which kind of shows you different things you can do, as well as some links to documentation if you need some help there. I'm going to X this out, and I'm going to point out a few things. So one, our URL has taken the name that I've created. It has this, it's attached to the org name. If I wanted to create a custom domain, I can do that, and I'll show you where to do that in a second. But two things to point out: we've got our site navigation, and what this is it'll handle anything you need to do in the Hub. If you go to the drop down, you can see all of the different pieces of content you can edit on your site, including there's the dashboard, there's teams, there's events, feedback, community, content library, and groups manager. We're going to be talking mostly through content library and the initiative site editor today. But there are other pieces of content on our YouTube channel if you want to know more about any of these other parts. Additionally, there's the overflow menu or the more menu that allows you to get different access. So if you wanted to edit the ArcGIS line, that's where you do that. And there's the sharing controls, which is very similar to ArcGIS Online. There's sharing level as well as edit access that you can control here. And there's the save button, which we added this recently, where you can actually make drafts and preview drafts and publish drafts. So you'll have to click this twice to be able to publish it finally, but that way you can see your changes without, and see drafts and share drafts without it being live. All right, and so go back to this sidebar here is a big part of editing. So if you go through, there's settings. This is where you do things like update the domain. So if you wanted to create a custom domain, you can do that here. You might have to publish it to be able to do that. But if you have a custom domain you want to buy and set up, that's how you do that. And the two things we're going to be spending the most time in today are the layout editor, which what this is this sidebar allows you to bring in different content. It's a drag and drop experience. So if I drop an image here, it'll automatically drop. I'll talk more about how this grid system works, but that's how you add content. And the theme we'll talk about later, which is the ability to control what colors show up and as well as the look and feel with fonts. But the main thing is with a couple clicks and a name, I have a starter site where I can start building my focus out. And this layout is guided to kind of help you think through what kind of things you want on your site. With that, let's talk about some of those basics. So what was just done when we created that app is it created a footprint in ArcGIS Online. When you create a site or an initiative in ArcGIS Online, what happens is you're first creating a hub site application or a site app, depending on your context. And there's two groups that come along with that as well, which is the content group and the core team group. The content group is for anything you add to the site. The core team group is for any people you add to be able to edit content on your site. If you're in a premium license context, there's an item that's called a hub initiative, and that adds additionally a group for site name followers. So basically, anyone who's following your initiative or your content on your site they will be in that group, which is separate from people who have access to edit the content. Additionally, if you create pages on your initiative or your site, you'll have a hub page or a site page created, and that's just an item in ArcGIS Online. And if you're in premium and you create a new event, a new group is made to house event attendees. So you can see in ArcGIS Online, this is what it would look like. You see there's a hub site application, your content, there's a hub initiative, and then there's in the groups section, there's the core team group, content group, and the followers group if you're in premium. You'll also see, like I mentioned, the event group and the new page item if you create those pieces of content. All right, so now we've got some of the basics. Let's talk through what kind of content we want to feature on this site. Hub, it's one hub, but you have many faces. There are many kinds of experiences you might want to showcase. So you start with Hub, you start with your launch site, and then you have different experiences you add. So things like story maps for creating narrative experiences, operations dashboard for more at a glance key performance indicators, experience builder for more full-fledged or more customized web experiences, and then Survey 123 if you want to get feedback from your end users. And you can feature all of that on a hub site. 4 things that a great site has, and again, you can adapt these as necessary for your needs. Great sites inform, they listen, they convene, and they monitor. We're going to talk through a bit about what that means now. So sites inform when they communicate goals and measurements. They educate, convey policies, share data and facts, encourage citizens to follow what issues matters most to them, and encourage best practices and behavioral changes. There are also Esri solutions that help with these concepts, including things like maps and scenes, story maps, experience builder, web app builder, ArcGIS Urban, and different configurable applications. And all these can be used to inform your end users. So this is a experience builder, and you can use experience builder to design more than just data. And this is a way to show people where to eat in San Diego. You're seeing a web app builder application for traffic counts, but it has an address search, and so you're allowing users to really search for themselves and put themselves in the data you provide. And you're seeing transit access in Pittsburgh, and you can use analysis to make static data more interesting. And again, all this content can be on your hub site and used to inform your end users. Or you can use story maps to show kind of the why for the work you do. One of the things that's great about Hub is that you can embed those, and it keeps the look and feel of your site, and people don't necessarily know they're leading to new content because they're seeing the same URL, they're seeing the same header. It looks as it's rendered right underneath the header, and this is a story map you created sort of in addition to the work you're doing on Hub, and it helps you keep context. Just a heads up, when you create a new initiative, this is on by default, but if it's not showing up when you're doing your work, it's in the site settings, and you can enable that by turning on the app page toggle. All right, great sites also listen, and listening involves soliciting data with follow-through, survey for opinions and ideas, other ways to create two-way communication, or directing people to workflows that may exist already within your organization. Those can be accomplished through different Esri solutions, including Survey 123, Crowdsource Reporter, Quick Capture, and Geoforms. You can listen for all kinds of things, including data. You can listen for opinions, and just trying to get subjective information about how safe people feel on a bike or driving in your city. Or you can use surveys to help with scheduling. And that connects to convene. So great sites often convene, and to convene, you can create events where the community can meet. You can form initiative teams to help work on your content, and you can create solutions together. And the way we do that in Hub is through events. We're not going to be talking a lot about events today, but it's a great way to be able to schedule and bring people together. And it provides easy scheduling, attendee registration with the community identity, as well as event calendars and embeds. So if you want to be able to show people what you're doing in the community and when they can come attend or attend virtually, that can be done with events. And again, that is with a premium licensing. You can also make engagement your goal. So what's great about the way we've made Hub is that when people attend your events, you can track how many attendees go to your events, and then you can use that, highlight that on your site to kind of show the impact you're having in your community. Great sites often also monitor, and that's being able to measure how you're progressing against specific goals and how your outcomes are looking over time, as well as to help you as an organization learn what actions and policies make the most impact for your community. We've got things like operations dashboard, experience builder, and also different cards in Hub sites and pages, like the summary statistics card and the chart card, to show how you're addressing issues with numbers. And there's also Google Analytics, which is a way to track how people are getting to your site and how much they engage with your content. So this is an example of a site that's been using the summary stats card or the chart card, and this is all powered by feature services on the back end. And you can configure these using the data you have. And you can see they also look great on mobile. Or if you have more full-fledged, in-depth dashboard needs, the Geo dashboard is a great, or operations dashboard is a great application to use, and you can embed that on your sites. And you can track engagement the old-fashioned web way using Google Analytics. All right, so now we've talked a bit about what makes good content. Let's see how to do that on sites in ArcGIS Hub. All right, so I'm back in my site editor. If I click that drop down, I'm going to go to the content library. Oop, let me save and publish my changes real quick. All right, and I published successfully. All right, now I'll go to my content library. And there's nothing in my site because it's just a brand new initiative. There's two ways I can do this. I can either click create new content, or in the nav bar, if I click the new drop down, I can see all different new content I can add. I can add applications, content, which are things like data or documents that I want to share with my community, feedback, which are it's a version of Survey 123 that we have made part of Hub, as well as new events. So I'm going to go to the new application. And so what we're going to do today, I'm going to create a survey, and I'm going to create a web map. And the web map is going to be to show parks, and the survey is going to be a pre-configured survey to get information about what people want in their parks. And we're going to try to guide it towards having more dogs in Philadelphia. So I'm going to click new web map, and when it creates that app that's creating that web map, it's creating a fresh web map. It's going to redirect me to the edit experience. And it's going to look really pretty similar to what you might see in ArcGIS Online. It's just the map editor that is in ArcGIS Online. I'm going to go back to the log in again. So I've created that web map. It's showing up in my content library, which is great. And if I go to new application again, I can add a survey that I can use to get feedback about our parks. What's great thing, this is a premium capability. If you go down to browse templates, there are templates that have been pre-configured that you can actually create yourself to share with your organization. And you can actually access templates that are available worldwide. So I'm going to click all. I'm going to go world, and I'm going to look for parks. And there's a survey that's been created about parks. And if I click activate, it'll create that survey and add it to my content library. To save time, because we're in a webinar, I'm going to go back to the content library and just add in an existing survey that I set up ahead of time. So I click add existing content. I'm going to do my content. I'm going to look for feedback. Oh, actually, it's in my world, and I'm going to add the survey to my site. And what that does, it just shares the item with the content group that we talked about earlier. And if I go back to the initiative site, I can go to layout and survey, and I can drop that survey I just added right into my site. select survey. And then people can either take the survey in a new tab, or if I go down to the feedback editor, I can go to embed, and it actually embeds the survey that I've added. And there's different settings I can turn on. If I want to make sure this doesn't show up on mobile, I can turn this on and it won't show up once they get too small. I have to publish that to happen. All right, and oh, while I'm here, I'll also add the web map so I can show people where parks are in Philly. And I'll drop that above because it's a little too claustrophobic. All right, and we'll ignore the orientation of that map for now. All right, so now we've seen how to make content and add content to your sites. Let's talk through layout fundamentals and how you can put up more of a bow on all that work you're doing with a site editor. So remember, on the internet, you have 5 seconds to capture someone's attention. So you really need to make it personal. Let photos speak for yourself. Let photos speak for you. Encourage participation, and overall, keep it simple. Hub sites out of the box are configured to drive towards a specific goal. So we place things pretty high up on the page. So you want to think about what's the one thing you want your community user to do or see, and how can you place that highest on the page. And a lot of times that means just creating a very simple site. So this is showing rain totals in Japan, and it's just a chart on a site with 2 tabs. Or there's we have our R&D center. There's ways to search for data and tools, but the only real driver here is being able to follow that follow button you're seeing. Tips from some of our design folks is to, before you build a site, sketch it out before you even open the application. Sometimes it can be easy to get caught up in all the things you can do. When you just have a pen and paper, you can focus on what you actually need to do for your work. So some site vocabulary to get out of the way. Header, that's referring to the very top of the page, and this is where the nav experience exists. Contains useful links, sign-in, branding, and a home link. There's the theme, which the theme is referring to the colors and fonts that are used on the site, and those are the main drivers between the look and feel of your site. There's a row card. The row card is a way to organize cards on your site, and it's a card that all other cards go into. You can also use these to override theme and different display options. Cards are placeable. That drag and drop thing I demoed earlier. It's a placeable piece of content on the site's main layout. There are many different kinds of cards to support many different design choices, and we'll talk through some of those today. And there's the footer, which is just opposite of the header. It's the footer, bottom of the site, and this is a really good place to put extra resources or things that are below the fold. So if you want to list out your department list or access to different documentation, that's a great place to put it. We use Bootstrap 3 to organize the site in terms of the grid. So a quick overview, Bootstrap it divides everything in width-wise into little boxes, 12 basic columns. So as you move through, it's going to divide that into 3. And it also allows you to make sure that different devices are accessing it in a way that you can have control over. There's a link to documentation here. We're in the process of upgrading to Bootstrap 4, but we're still on Bootstrap 3. How this actually works when you're editing your site is you'll see on the hover, you'll see a little arrow that pops up, and that allows you to kind of adjust how that grid is allocated on your site. All right, and let's see that in practice. I'm going to go ahead and remove these for now, just because they're cluttering my layout. I go back to layout, and I drag in a image card. You can see that the grid has been divided. That's in 6 and 6. I'm going to bring in an image of my dog. One second. All right, so see a picture of my dog. I'm going to crop that to be a little tighter. Click done. Now it's been cropped, and the text doesn't look so great so far. I'm just going to change the text up. Say, bring your pup. Really needs more dogs. And I'm going to change some of the layouts here. Actually, move this over a little bit. And now that I see it, I'm going to move it to the left. And then I can adjust the size depending on how what I think looks best. And that's pretty good to me so far. But you can see how to change layouts. It's pretty straightforward. Just hover over the content and click the arrow in the direction you want to move it. And we'll leave that there for now. All right, so now we're going to go through all the layout cards that you have access to and when to use them. So first is setting a theme for your site. That's going to be in that sidebar that I was mentioning. First thing, if you don't know where to start, your organization probably has brand guidelines on some level. So look for those. Make sure you avoid dramatic fonts that are hard to read. It might seem like a great thing to give your separate identity based on a really interesting looking font, but fonts are really hard to read often. And you want to be able to test every page in your site, not just the layout. And that's places like the dataset page or the item page, search results, and any page you create or link to the site. And often you can just find the person whose job this is and either consult them or ask them if they have some guidance as far as theme. All right, and so I'm going to quickly show how to do that. So we're in Philly. So let's say I was working for the city of Philadelphia. There's a site already made. They have a really great design group there that manages their brand. And so what you can do is you can inspect different pieces of this website and just use colors and styling there. So I'm going to go down, find the color, copy that in. If I go to the theme, part of my sidebar there, and I'm going to change the global nav background color. It's kind of changed a little bit. I'm going to change the header to white to kind of match that same style. And then if I wanted to go down, and you see that the blue is a little bit different now, which is cool. Come in here and do the same thing as I did before. Looking a little bit more Philly. And go back to the theme. I'm also going to quickly update the fonts. So let me see, if I go to site here, I can check out what these fonts are. This is first I'll find the body, which is at the bottom here. Select the element. If I look down, I'm seeing Open Sans. So I'm going to use Open Sans for the body. And then it should show me where come up here. I'll inspect this element. And it should say Montserrat, I think is what I remember. Yep, Montserrat. So I'm going to use Montserrat, and I'm going to use Open Sans. So I go down to the fonts. I can go, we support Google fonts, and these are free fonts that you can get at fonts.google.com. So I'm going to look for Montserrat. And I'm going to select this style. Actually, I believe it was 400. So I'm going to use the 400 just to be sure. Select this style. And actually, I think I can just use the link directly. So I'm going to paste that in. Oh, I actually did that wrong. So I want to use this as the header. So I'm going to go over to heading font, hit preview. Looks like it's working. And I'm going to do Open Sans, and then do Open Sans here, hit preview, and hit apply. And you can see it started to update things. The fonts have changed. So it has that look and feel of that site. I'm not going to go super in depth because we don't have enough time, but that's how you would go about building the site, using an existing example site to help. All right, the row card. It's a great card that allows you to get control of your layout. It's great for edge-to-edge images where you can have focal point control. Edge-to-edge images will look very different depending on the device size, so you're going to want to test those out on different devices. This can also be used to override theme for the text and background color. So you might have noticed some of the rows were taking the font that I applied. That's because they have a different font. So you might need to go change that if you're trying to use custom fonts. And you can also set wide versus box. So if you have a row of something that is more full screen, like an app or a map or video, you can turn that on to wide. Or if you have something where it's just containing other cards, you can use the box setting. And one of the best things is the row class name. So what that does, it allows you to access different Bootstrap classes that operate different on different devices. And we'll show that right now. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my layout editor. I'm going to find an application. I'm going to drop it in. And I'm going to select the application, and it's going to be a dashboard. All right. So dashboards are great. Unfortunately, they don't always look great on mobile. So as you can see, it's pretty congested as it is. But if I start changing the size of the view, it becomes harder and harder to see. What's great about this, though, with the row editor is you can actually come in, access the row, and add a row class, and it's hidden. And then you add the view pane that it's hidden at. So I'm going to say it's hidden for medium devices. So when I do that, the whole row goes away. It's not just the item, it's the whole row can be hidden. So if you have content that's not looking good on mobile at all, you can just hide it and it won't show up when you're on mobile. So great thing to use when you're trying to control different access, especially depending on different device sizes. Text cards are also a great thing to use. They allow you to do a lot on Hub sites. And it supports the most advanced layout choices. So you actually can edit the HTML directly in the card using that advanced code mode. And there are also Bootstrap examples that we've added, and we're adding more all the time, where you can actually add different elements directly into the site. So things right now, it's buttons, wide cards, and an accordion option, which is great if you're trying to do things like an FAQ for your site. Bootstrap tables are also supported. So if you wanted to do tables, you can see there's a table icon there. Very similar to other rich editing experiences for building those tables. And there's also other examples you can find using Google. Some useful Bootstrap classes, I talked about hidden already, but image responsive is another great one. If you have images and you want to make sure that they don't just they don't respond in kind of more of a chunky experience, that they actually resize. If you add image dash responsive, they'll shrink and enlarge as you change the view size. There's also a lot more resources you can find for custom HTML and Bootstrap. We use CalSite Bootstrap as a great place to start. Additionally, you can Google Bootstrap 3 plus the thing you're trying to do, and a lot of our users end up building some amazing things doing that. As you're customizing your site, one thing you really want to check for is your accessibility. So if you want to check for contrast, there's the webaim.org link that you can see on your screen. And there's also Chrome Lighthouse audits, and we use that every time we release just to make sure that our accessibility is staying within a range that we need it to be. There's also plugins for Chrome and Firefox. I have the Axe extension on my Firefox. and you can audit your sites and pages when you're using the developer tools. Just a heads up, not all of these issues are yours to solve. Some of those things are for our team to fix, and we're investing a lot of developer hours into accessibility. The main thing you have control over is alt text. So when you're adding images, make sure you add some kind of a description for that image, so screen readers can be able to let different users be able to hear what site that is, what the image is representing. Image card, it's great for images that aren't edge to edge. So if you need edge to edge images, again, use the row card. But for images that are alongside other content, the image card is what you use. Make sure that you're using HTTPS, so it's not getting blocked by cross-origin issues. And if we select scale image to fill, that's that image responsive class that I spoke about earlier. And again, don't forget your alt text. Another thing is that if you have images hosted in ArcGIS Online, they're going to keep the same sharing level of the site or page they're attached to. So you don't have to worry about people being able to access different images if they have access to the site, or if they don't have access to the site, they won't have access to the image, or they will, depending on their sharing. Some ideas about where to find good images. Your organization probably has some good images to start. But if they don't, you can also screenshot the content you're creating in ArcGIS and be able to kind of just put that there. Also, heads up, Unsplash and Pexels does not require attribution. But if you're using images from Flickr, you do need to attribute the images in your footer, in addition to icons from Noun Project. If you pay for the items or the icons in Noun Project, you don't have to attribute to them. But if you don't, then put that in the footer. So when you're showing curated content on your site, you have 6 different card choices. So you have to think through, if you have a lot of items that you're putting on your site, i.e. more than 10, you can combine the category. You can use the category card, which basically it allows you to create a query using search that using tags or groups will lead people to a list of items in the search experience. That way you can push users to the experience to all the items you want within the search interface. You can still use a gallery card if you want to show your favorite featured content, but in general, avoid making a gallery card with more than 10 items, because it just ends up looking like a kind of yard sailing of content, and it's very easy to overlook for most users. If you have a small number of items that you want people to see, then the gallery card is a great thing to use. Or if you have users visiting the site and you just want them to experience one application or map, then the iframe or the app card on a full width row is a great way to go. And you might even want to use its own page depending on the experience you're going for. All right, so using the gallery card, we spent a lot of time making sure sharing works really well for this. So if I come in and I use the gallery card, drop it in, I can use dynamic mode, which is basically it's constructing a query for different item types, and they'll keep updated as long as people are tagging it or sharing it to the right group. Or you can use manual if you want to manually select the content. We're going to use manual today. I'm going to select a few items here. And you can see they're embedded here. I have some control over appearances. I can change if they're using icons versus thumbnails. I can change if it's square or rounded. I can add a drop shadow if I think that adds to my site. And I can control if they're open in the same tab or in a new tab. But what's great about this is if I have shared content with a small subset of users and they're authenticated and logged in, they will see the content that has been shared to them. But if an anonymous user is accessing the site, they're not going to see that content unless it's also shared publicly. And the whole set will, the cards themselves were dynamically rendered based on sharing access. So it's a really great way. You can use one page to provide access to content for a wide variety of users. That's what we call hiding in plain sight. All right, so you can also extend the hub. So if there are things you want to highlight on your site that are more advanced, the iframe card is a great thing to use. Just heads up that you are responsible for making your iframe content responsive. So for example, if you have a Tableau visualization, there's a setting called adaptive layout, which will make sure that your visualizations are responsive. There's also other ways that people have extended sites with custom hosted code, like our friends in Johns Creek, who have put all of their expense data as a table on their site, and they've hosted that themselves and iframe that in. We also have the chart card, which I spoke about a little bit earlier. A great way to summarize attributes of your feature services with bar charts, pie charts, scatter plots, or custom charts. And you can also, where we built that on Cedar, so if you need to extend and have, you're not seeing the functionality you need in what we've built, you can extend it yourself, and there's links in here for documentation on that. But just look up Esri Cedar charting on Google and you'll find the documentation. Summary statistics cards, also a really powerful way to show very specific numbers, especially if you're trying to show things like KPIs. It's like the chart card, except it summarizes to a single metric instead of showing a metric by a value. It supports filtering, and you can also, if you want more control and you want to do something more than what you see the chart card is doing, you can iframe in an operations dashboard widget or an operations dashboard app that just has one widget, which so our friends in Brampton have done. So you can actually see this is an operations dashboard. It's 8 different applications with one widget, and that way they're achieving more of this control that they wanted to do for their display. There's also the media card. If you have videos that you host in either YouTube or Vimeo for your organization, you can host those on. You can display those on the sites just by pasting a link. The video controls options will differ depending on your provider. We currently don't support third-party files, but we have plans for that in the future. Social media card is also a great way to highlight different content you might have. So if you have a social media person who has timelines pertinent to your initiatives, you can embed that content either in single posts or tweets or in timelines. And you can also embed things like Facebook events pages. And again, those controls update depending on the type of content. We also have the banner card. The banner card is one of the first cards we made available, and it's great for a Jumbotron experience. You have a big heading and a search bar below it. We have added more advanced options with some updates we did to the search cards and text cards in recent years. So we generally recommend using that. And you can have much more customized possibilities using the text card and search card combined. All right, with that, let's end with some resources and get to Q&A. So first place to check out, if you need more ideas for your sites and pages, check out the gallery on our product page. That's hub.arcgis.com/pages/gallery. You can also access Learn lessons and more of a how-to experience on learn.arcgis.com. We have a few Hub lessons there. And all this is linked in the Hub overview as well. So if you ever run into issues, we've tried to make documentation as clear as it can be from the app itself. And with that, I think we're ready for questions.
All right, thank you, Patrick. We're now going to begin answering the questions submitted during today's presentation. We've received quite a few, and we will try to get through as many as possible, but whatever we do not get to today, we will address in a GeoNet blog post after this webinar. As a reminder, you can still submit questions through the questions pane in your attendee control panel. Our first question is, when developing the Hub site, is there a way to use versioning somehow so that multiple people can work on different parts of the site, then merge that work back into a master version, so to speak? Or is it simply last save wins, potentially overwriting previous saves by others?
That's a great question. So short answer is no, we don't support versioning in that way. We recently added the draft experience that was in the last few months, and that allows you to share drafts with people to get feedback. But there's not the full way you're thinking of, probably in a collaborative way of being able to see edits that are made and track those and then merge changes. We have talked about that, and we have plans for that in the future, but it's not there yet.
All right, thank you. Is it possible to build a Hub site for a client and transfer ownership to the customer when the project is completed?
Yes, it is. If you're working between orgs, you might need to use something like an external process. We often use, there's an application, AGO administrator application that a person at Esri created a few years ago. That's great for copying things over. The one thing you have to know is that it's really easy to break things, and the relationships between content are kind of hard to bring over. So in general, if you're working with a customer or building a site for someone, I would try to get access to their org so it can live in the org it's going to actually exist in permanently, and then you can just transfer ownership in ArcGIS Online or add them to the team, or just they can own the items once you're done.
All right, thanks. Is it possible to clone a hub from one ArcGIS Online account or enterprise portal to another?
Yeah, sort of similar question. That's the reason why we created templates. So you can actually create templates now. If you go into Hub and you create a site and you think it looks pretty good, you can make that into a template. And then if you make that publicly available, I believe, I haven't tested it out recently, but you should be able to clone that template and then start from there. But yeah, it's a kind of similar thing to the last question, is you need to copy the whole thing over. There are some external ways to do that between orgs, but it can get kind of hairy depending on the relationships between pieces of content.
All right. Is it possible to have private and public data sections in the same hub?
Yeah, it is. So you can have your public and private data alongside each other, and then a lot of our customers end up doing that. And if you wanted to feature some of the content on a site or a page, like I was saying with the gallery card, if people have access to private data, it will show up if you've added that gallery card for it, and if they don't, it won't show up. So we've tried to do as much as we can to make sure that you can have one experience, one entry point to multiple experiences, and that your data is not being accidentally shared publicly.
All right, thanks. Can you use any survey from your org, or can it only be one of those Facebook feedback surveys?
Yeah, you can use any survey in your org. You can add pretty much any piece of content you want to your hub sites. So if there's an existing survey that you really like, you can add that directly into your site.
Awesome. Is there a GeoNet online community Q&A forum for learning and asking questions?
There is, and that's actually the bottom bullet there is a great place to get in touch with us if you have questions or you have feedback or ideas. We are very active on GeoNet, so go ahead and post your questions or ideas there.
All right. How is Enterprise Hub different from Enterprise Portal?
So yeah, there might be some confusion with the naming. So ArcGIS Hub is an ArcGIS Online application, and Enterprise Sites is portal capability. So they're very similar experiences, very similar. It's the same site builder, but one is a product that is just for ArcGIS Online, and one is a product that's just for Enterprise. The differences earlier in the presentation, there's a list of kind of the differences there. But in general, if you can use Hub, use Hub. If you need something to be behind a firewall or only available to people over VPN, and you can't use ArcGIS Online, then use sites, and you can build sites and apps. You won't be able to do any of the community features, but you'll be able to create sites and make that available to people on VPN.
Perfect, thank you. Can we apply group security to sites?
Group security. So the way access is provided to different content in the hub is using groups. So we referred to teams a few times when I was talking through earlier, and there's the content team, or there's the content group, there's the followers group, there's all these different groups, and what that does is it allows people to have access to items depending on the settings you set. So you can provide edit access to pages and sites. You can provide just view access to edit to pages and sites or different content on your site. But as far as group security, it's using groups on the back end to control all of that.
Okay, great. Is Microsoft Stream supported in the media card?
I do not know. Well, I'll say no, it's not. I don't know where it's at in the backlog in terms of when we might support that. Right now, it's Vimeo and YouTube that's supported in the media card.
Okay. Is there support for additional languages and translations in hub sites or plans for it?
Great question. So short answer is yes. We recently added a translate button to sites. It's using Google Translate. That project has been deprecated by Google, so we're going to need to find a new way to do that. But we're very interested in making sure that sites are translated kind of on the fly. Another way you can do that though is if you create multiple sites for different languages. Like if you have expertise in your organization for language-wise, you can clone the site and translate it and then link it in the header. And a lot of our users have done that.
All right. How many people within my organization can edit an ArcGIS Hub project? Is there a limit?
That's a great question. I don't think there's a hard limit. I might be kicking myself later for remembering some ArcGIS Online limitation for, like, I don't know, 200 people or something. But I think there's no limit to the amount of users that can edit a site. But I can follow up in a blog post or a post on GeoNet.
Yeah. So when we have an update, if you'd like, we can add that to the blog that we post. Another question: are there plans to provide the same functionality in sites as there is in Hub?
Yeah, so we every time we prepare a new release for enterprise sites, we try to bring over all the features we can from the previous year. The only limitation we have are things like if we have APIs that we manage ourselves, like our search API and our download system, and those are things we can't always bring over. And also community identities and that whole concept it's just not really possible, and it's not part of the product. So if you have access to ArcGIS Line and you want to do community work, then use ArcGIS Hub. But we try to do everything we can, but we are limited sometimes by the platform and by the environment that our users are accessing it in.
All right. Are any of the customizations in the settings or in the available cards tools that are only available in the premium version?
There are certain cards that will only show up if you're in premium. So for example, events, there's no events experience unless you're in premium. So those cards won't exist. Offhand, I can't think of any specific customization that's not available between the two. It's just that some cards will show up and some won't, depending on whether you have that in your licensing.
All right. What user type and user role do I need, if any, for simply browsing the data and downloading it?
Nothing. You don't need if the site's available. Anyone can access data downloads. If it's private, then you need to be authenticated in ArcGIS Online. But if it's not private and it's just on a public site, then you can see it and download it. There's no limitations there.
All right. Do the summary statistics support REST endpoint data or only hosted data?
It needs to be an item in ArcGIS Online on some level, or in Portal, depending on the context. It doesn't need to be hosted though. So if you have your own data hosted somewhere and it's registered somewhere in ArcGIS Online or Portal, then you should be able to access it from the summary stat card.
All right. Are there backups of the hub site? Can you go back to a previous backup?
That's a great question. There isn't a versioning experience yet, so there's no immediate way to do that. My recommendation is if you want to try something out as a draft, you can always clone a site and then rename it to the old site's name or one of those kind of flows. There's also, you can create drafts and share that draft out and get feedback before you actually publish it. So there's no way to go back a few months and go to the old version, no. But we don't ever delete anything, so unless you actively delete it, it'll always be there.
All right. And for our very last question, is it possible to add some sort of a blog to an initiative, like a place where people can leave comments on a specific topic that everyone can see and respond to?
Yeah, we've talked about that. So we are building some more feedback and kind of chat experience, and we have plans for that in the upcoming year. but currently no. You can embed different things using IFrame Card. There might be some limitations with some of those experiences, so if you might be able to embed something like that, but for right now we don't support it in the hub.
All right, thank you, Patrick, and thank you everyone for attending today's webinar, Designing Sites and Pages in ArcGIS Hub and ArcGIS Enterprise. If you have any other questions, please feel free to contact me using my email address and your follow-up email.